Right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute. We'll allow everybody a couple of seconds here to adjust their audio, make sure you can hear us, and then we'll get started with our webinar. Good afternoon. My name is Trish McFarland. I'm the president of the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, and we are thrilled to be with you again this afternoon for another webinar. And today we will be talking about how to apply for more money here in Delaware County. Part of the series that we've been doing is to make this navigation of all of the resources right now easy to understand and apply. So this afternoon we have two of our experts with us. We have Francis Sheehan and we have Goorich Cairns, who is on vacation. So we're so thrilled to be able to have you here with us this afternoon as well. And they will both walk you through the process of applying for the Delco Strong grant opportunities. So as I mentioned, we have Francis and we have Laura, and Laura is going to start this afternoon with your portion of this. Laura, thank you so much.
Thanks, Trish. So just to really basically what has occurred is Delaware County Council is going to use $14 of CARES funding in order to help the for-profit and nonprofits in Delaware County. $10 million is segregated for the for-profit businesses and $4 million is going to go towards the nonprofits. And it is being administered by our office in conjunction with the Foundation for Delaware County, who is going to assist us with the nonprofit application and submission and review. There is a desire to fund every application possible, but understand, of course, that we are subject to federal audit because of the source of funds. And so what we need to do on both sides is to ensure that we have all the necessary documentation in order to be able to fund any possible candidates. We are utilizing a co-brand. We're using the one brand, which is the Delco Strong brand, as the landing page for both programs. So we are going to start with the Delco Strong page, and you will either be directed to go to the nonprofit page or to go to the for-profit page, depending upon which grant you're applying for. And I will screen share that for you now, just so you are aware. And I'm going to the wrong one. How do I do this? Share. There we go. So no www, what you'll see up here is delcostrong.delcopa.org. And this is the main page that'll show you if you are a nonprofit, you click here. And if you're a for-profit business, you're going to click here. Now, who is eligible for the for-profit side? It is any Delaware County headquartered entity with under $9 million in annual revenue. And basically what we are looking at is the companies that have had business interruption as a result of the COVID-19 shutdown. If you didn't have any business interruption or revenue loss, it's sort of, you know, there are one or two of you out there. We really can't fund you because this is literally the premise of the program is the economic loss here. The application period for the for-profit, which is different than for the nonprofit, for the for-profit, will start at 5 a.m. on July 7th and run through 5 p.m. on July 9th, the Thursday, and we'll have an application ability to do an online submission at this web page. And you can also do a paper submission drop-off at our offices between 8:30 and 4:30 on those 3 days. We will not accept applications before that period. We will not accept applications or additional material for your application after that period. It is anticipated that this is going to be a competitive round of funding, so it is important to make sure that you submit all of the required documentation that is outlined on this website repeatedly in order to be considered for this program. Now, grants will be up to $10,000 for businesses up to $4.5 million and $20,000 for grant for businesses that demonstrate $9 million in revenue. Annual revenue is based on the tax return. The grant award. So while we're going to talk about how, you know, we're doing these two-tiered level in terms of your revenue, we can't fund based on economic loss. What we can fund is based upon your working capital and operational expenditures for the quarter on the most recent executed tax return. So what we can do is actually, reimburse you for costs that, you have as part of your operation expenditure. So it would be your COGS, your costs of goods, if you're a manufacturer, or if you are, say, for instance, a restaurant and you have to have inventory. If you are a bit more of a passive business that doesn't have, you're providing service and not an actual good, you would still have operating costs that are a little bit lower on your tax return in terms of your rent, your employees. You'll see it down there in the secondary level before you actually get to your tax amount. So we are taking a certain amount of those line items in a tax return into consideration as well, as part of the operational costs, your insurances, your rent, your payroll. You will need to certify that you have suffered a loss or incurred additional expenditure in accordance with the public health emergency, in at least the amount greater to otherwise compensated. So if we're saying we're going to offer you a $10,000 grant, you're going to have to certify that you have had a loss incurred, that you have those expenditures that need to be covered up to $10,000. And that can be for expenses that are normal expenses ongoing within the business, or they can also be for additional items that need to be purchased as the new way of doing business as a result of this public health crisis. So, we typically think of those things as being the masks and the gloves and the hand sanitizer. In some instances, we're also going to see that in terms of needing, plastic barriers, or, new signage, or trying to transition the business in order to keep social distance going on while we are still going through this crisis. Those are considered new operational costs, and those would be covered. The business must be headquartered in Delaware County. It cannot exceed 9 million annual revenue, and you must have an economic loss due to COVID-19. We do have priorities, and our priorities are not absolutes. They just mean that these are candidates that will sort of take a front row position in terms of the selection process for funding. And those are the ones that we're not allowed to operate in yellow or red phases. And by that, we're saying not an absolute. So we know that a lot of our hospitality industry, especially restaurants, would try to modify business practice where they would have a sit-in restaurant, but we're not able to accommodate customers in that manner. So they would do takeout service. That still means that you're not at a full operation. We're not cutting you off from consideration. We're actually making the hospitality industry a priority, knowing that they are one of the hardest hit industries. Businesses also that self-certify as a minority, a women, or a veteran-owned business. And we know that there is certification for those businesses out there. We're not looking for that certification. We don't want a copy of the certification. The only time anybody actually goes after that certification is when you are going to conduct business with the state or federal government, typically. So we're not interested in the certification, but if your business is 51% or more owned by minority, women, or veteran owned, you would take a priority position in this application. We're looking at the industries that we can, have been told and also have seen are the hardest hits. Your retail entities, the hospitality industry, the education and medical industries, the agriculture, manufacturing, and service, your barbers and groomers, et cetera. Priority preference does not exclude a business, again, from consideration. It only indicates the preferred preference. The ineligible entities, we were not going to do any businesses that are not headquartered in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. It seems sort of strange that, given that this is the Delco Strong program, that we have to iterate that, but we actually do have to reiterate that. In Delco Strong 1, we had at least 10 candidates that weren't physically located in Delaware County. I think the furthest we got in application was from Texas, and apparently there is a Delaware County, Texas, but it's not as big as Delaware County, PA. Or as great for that matter. Anyway, businesses that did not experience a revenue loss due to COVID-19. It's the whole premise of the program, people. If you did not have a loss due to COVID-19, we can't fund you. Businesses that were not operational by December 31st, 2019. And that's strictly because there has to be this demonstrated economic revenue loss in accordance with CARES Act. Passive businesses such as commercial or residential landlord. And we got a little kickback on that one, but we did talk to one commercial real estate owner and said, what's more important, we fund you or we fund the businesses that occupy your space? And in the thought process of that, it's that the tenant, you want that tenant to remain there, you want that tenant to be viable, that business to be viable in order to be able to pay the landlord, and they agreed, and not going to do any passive businesses such as commercial or residential landlords. Sorry. Government or non-government owned entities, or government owned entities in nonprofits, of course, because we do have the sister program with the Foundation for Delaware County. We also cannot do private clubs or businesses that limit membership for reasons other than capacity. Those engaged in lobbying or political activities, again, exceeding $9 million in revenue. And also businesses not compliant with all federal, state, and local laws, including taxation. We'll get back to that. Businesses awarded funding in the first round of Delco Strong will not be eligible for this round. So anybody who did receive a grant in the first round of Delco Strong will not get a grant. In this round, they won't be considered eligible. And we know that there is a difference. You know, there was a limit because of, there was a couple of different funding sources in Delco Strong 1 that limited our ability to be able to fund any business up to $7,500. In order to sort of, you know, for lack of a better term, make whole, which is not making anybody whole, but because there's a differential in terms of the funding levels for this round, Delaware County Council has approved what we have called Delco Boost. So any of those awardees in round 1 will actually receive an additional $2,500 as long as they can certify they have additional expenditures that are not covered due to loss due to COVID-19. If you are an awardee from Delco Strong 1, I'm very sorry about that, but you will be hearing about the additional $2,500 coming about mid-July, and we will be reaching back out to all of the awardees as soon as we close this round. Businesses which are not in compliance with the current public health guidelines, we understand that this is starting to become somewhat of an issue, that people are not adhering, business owners are not adhering to the public health guidelines. We've seen it in other places outside of Delaware County. And it does actually increase the COVID-19 count because they are not being compliant with the public health guidelines. So therefore, it was a decision that we made in order to ensure that any business that we fund is going to be compliant with the current public health guidelines. And they also comply with the reopening restrictions. So, you know, it's sort of a be that as it may. You know, we understand that not a lot of people are happy with the current restrictions in place. We are empathetic to that, but we cannot, as a government entity, sort of quasi-government entity, fund something that isn't adhering to current public policy from that position. We also have included the nonprofit link, just in case you are a nonprofit. And then requirements for the application. There are essentially 3 things that are required for this application: the application questionnaire, and a tax return, and a 2020 P&L. And I'm going to go over this a little bit. We'll get back to the application questionnaire. But first and foremost, we need to see your 2019 or your 2018 tax return. We understand not everybody's filed their 2019s yet, but you should at least have a 2018 since all of the viable extensions with the federal government have run out at this juncture. We want both your federal and your Pennsylvania return in full. If you file a 1065, we want all of it. We want to see your state, business tax return as well. If you file on a Schedule C or a Schedule F, which is typically within your individual tax return, we want the full tax return. We want your full entire tax return for the federal and for the state. And we especially want to see that Schedule C or Schedule F on the Pennsylvania side. And that's just going to indicate to us that you are being compliant with, as we said before, that you are being compliant with taxation rules for not only federal, but also for the state level. If you only have a 2018 and you don't have your 2019 complete yet, we are going to ask you for additional material. We're going to ask you for a profit and loss statement for the year of 2019. That can be internally created. You don't need to go to an accountant and pay additional monies. There is an example of a P&L on our website that you can use as a guideline on how to create a P&L. Many of you actually use like a QuickBooks types function internally for your own business. Most of those business softwares will actually create a P&L for you, and we just want the calendar year 2019. For businesses that started operations in 2019 but don't have a 2019 tax return, we're going to go the additional step and ask for your articles of incorporation. That's the only time that we're actually going to ask for your articles of incorporation, is if you're that young of a business. We're going to ask that you turn around and provide to us a P&L for the existence of your business from, if you started in February, so it would be February of 2019 through December of 2019. Or, if you started in June 2019 through, December of 2019. It's just to be able to give some of that financial history so that we know what we're looking at in order to be able to make a comparison, so we can make a demonstrative case for there actually being a revenue loss that would qualify for this program based on the shutdown for COVID-19. And lastly, it's the accountant or internally prepared statement of profit and loss for 2020. And that's basically so that we can take a look at your prior year financial information versus this year's financial information in order to be able to say demonstratively that there is an economic loss and that you are certifying that it is because of the COVID-19 shutdown. We're going to ask that you don't submit any bank statements as your profit and loss statement. That's why we actually included on our webpage a sample P&L for you to be able to look at. There are many of them out there. You can Google them. There's even YouTube videos on how to step-by-step go through and make up, devise your own P&L based on the financial information that you have. The other thing that we will tell you right now is that many of you also, when you go through your tax preparer, end up with a tax return that has password protected. And that was a struggle for us in Delco Strong 1, because we received quite a few of them where we could not find or identify where the password was. So before you upload anything to us, please make sure that either the password protection is off, print it and rescan it, whatever you have to do, or make sure that you insert into the actual file name the password for that tax return. Because if we can't access it, we can't fund you. It's just not gonna, we need to have that financial information, again, going back, premise of the program, also the fact that these are federal funds and subject to audit. So we won't, that's, we want to fund everybody, but not having those passwords inhibits our ability to do so. Use of funds. So if granted, you can use it to cover the working capital costs necessary during the shutdown and also during modified operations. Because if you're modifying your operation, you're not at 100% of where you were, and we know that, so that it can continue. We want you to be able to survive this, and also you can pay for any of the public health requirements that are necessary in order to continue operating either in a modified function or at a full function. Funding can't pay for owner's salary or pay for the owner outright. The only exception for this is when the owner is part of the salary in your tax return, not officer salary. We're not going to take a look at that, just letting you know. So, and what you'll see at the bottom of the page, there's a guide to filling out the application. It'll tell you which are going to be the required fields that you have to answer in order to be able to submit. The actual copy of the questionnaire is here. The sample profit and loss statement that I referred to earlier. We also have a checklist because we know that, for lack of a better term, you've got a lot of stress going on as business owners. And so it can be difficult to sort of remember what did that woman say on July 2nd? And I'm not sure I understand what's going here. So it's a step-by-step. It does exactly as it does earlier in the website. 2019, go no further, go on to step 3. Or if you're doing your 2018 tax return, you need that 2019 P&L. It reasserts, we want the full and complete tax return, even if it is the individual tax return, the full and complete tax return. And then also, where do you find your NAICS code? And we'll get back to that in a second, but just note that this is here. Not only do we tell you where to identify your NAICS code on your tax return, but it also does do a 2-level breakdown. We just want the first 2 digits, which is called a sector code. And the sector code is going to go back to those preferences of this program. And I can actually open that, hold on. So what you'll see here is that if you're scheduling an 1120, it's in box B, it's your business activity code on the tax returns. But here you can also see the sectors and their descriptions. So when we say that hospitality is going to be a priority, that is typically right here. It's your accommodation and food services groups. Your barbershops, your hair salons, nail salons, and dry cleaners and dog groomers are all going to show up as 81s, other services except public administration. Your eds and meds, your educational services, and your healthcare and social assistance are going to be the 61 and 62 sector codes. And the construction code is a 23, manufacturing is a 31, 32, or 33. And with that, I am going to go over to the, if I can get there, the application questionnaire. So we're asking for some typical information here. Your business legal name, a DBA if you use one, the year your business was founded, states incorporated into. It's going to be a big red flag to us if you don't submit a tax return and claim that you started in 2019, but the year your business was founded on here says 2011. So just be mindful of what you're actually inserting into this application, please. Your business physical address, does the business own or lease the property? If the business leases the property, is the property owned by a business owner or a relative of the business owner? So in a lot of instances, what we'll see is that the company owners are also the owners of the real estate via different vehicle, like a different real estate holding company. In those instances, we really cannot pay rent. What we did for Delco 1 was we said, you know, send us your mortgage statements, even if it's under a separate holding company. In this, we're not looking for any of those invoices, but we do need to know in order to be able to investigate further exactly how well we can fund you based on that. If there's an existing mortgage on the property, that'll help us. But if it's owned by the owner or a relative of the business owner, we're going to have to question it. So that's also just to be compliant with program. Business website address, the FEIN, which is your federal identification number, tax ID number, your employer number. It's a 9-digit code, starts with 2 with a dash and a 7, the 2-digit NAICS. And this is really highly important. You know, even if we've seen a couple of instances where a construction firm, you know, that they basically work on various redevelopment of buildings, commercial and residential, and they put in that they were a 55 code. And if they weren't a 55 code, they were a 23. And that would actually bump them down from our perspective. This is what we call a pull code. This is one of the markers that we're going to use in order to be able to pull applications. So the 2-digit NAICS cannot be understated in terms of the importance of what it's going to represent for the reviewers and the administrators of this program in terms of who they're going to look to fund. So please pay attention to that 2-digit NAICS. And also make sure you do provide a short description of what the business does. And here you're going to see that other preference underneath it, the 51% or more owned by a minority, woman-owned, or veteran-owned company. Again, that's a self-certifying question. It is not something that we're looking for you to have something to back up. We don't want any backup material. We just want the tax return. Business ownership is pretty straightforward. There are a couple of instances where perhaps you might have another entity that has invested in your company. So you may own 30%, another entity may own additional 30%. If the owner of 20% or more of your business is not an individual, but is an actual other entity, we want a breakdown of that entity. If it's like an LLC or partnership, we want to know the ownership of that LLC or partnership. And that should be displayed on a separate sheet of paper somewhere if possible and uploaded with your submission or in print form. The employment, and a lot of people get hung up on this. We're asking this question. It's not a requirement of program. There is no preference based on employment in this round. Number of employees, we're simply asking the question, how many employees did you have? How many employees do you have today? You know, have you had to furlough or lay off employees? And we sort of use that as just a marker internally to say, you know, is what we're hearing accurate? You know, I believe right now, historically, what we were looking at in the last couple of years is that unemployment was hovering around 5% in Delaware County. And right now, as of today, I think it's around 14%. And so that we're simply asking the question because it's sort of a no-brainer to ask the businesses, how many people do you employ? But please understand that this has no bearing whatsoever on your application. What we're going to ask here, the COVID-19 related questions, which I think got a little tricky last time for a few people, Is your business open today? Yes, partially, or no. So if you are a restaurant that is doing some takeout, or you're doing dining in, out in the street, that is a partial. You're not utilizing your dining room. And is the business open today fully? I can't think of a business that's open fully at this juncture. But I do know that there are some industries that weren't able to operate until we fully went green, and some may not be operating at all until they feel that they can adhere to those public health requirements. So that's why we're asking the question. And we realize some of it may be subjective, but we are looking at base it also on the public health guidelines. And also, were you closed because of COVID-19? Are you in compliance with the public health guidelines, and is this a phased restricted opening? When we ask you to describe how long your business, this is sort of, the essay question, I guess, on any kind of questionnaire, right? But basically, we're just looking for relative business information. So you closed, what day did you close? How long were you closed for? Was it for 10 weeks? Was it for 16 weeks? Were you closed for 6 and then modified your operation? And, think about, are you operating fully? Those are key sort of questions to ask yourself before filling out that question. We're not looking for, the sort of, for lack of a better term, pardon me, but fluff information about, how we understand you're hurting. We know that that's happening, but here's where we want specifics in terms of how your business is operating today. How long were you closed for? What are you doing? How are you operating? Not necessarily anything other than that in terms of that question. This is also a major question right here. This is another application marker question. And this is going to be based on the estimated revenue loss for all of 2020. So how are you supposed to do that? Because we're only in July, right? You can take into consideration that Delaware County, for all intents and purposes, going from closed to green was approximately 16 weeks. That's over 1 quarter, it's a quarter and a half. So consider that 25% right there. Especially if you're still operating at a modified rate as opposed to operating at normal rate, you're probably looking at additional loss there. We're not looking for absolutes. We're asking you to provide the number that you believe that you're going to be down in revenue for the entire year compared to last year. And it's just it's an ask, but carefully consider that question before asking, because if you mark off on this 0, as in you had 0 revenue loss, that's going to put you down in the field of contenders, especially if you are a restaurant that had been closed, even with a modified business practice. You should be you're probably looking at 50 to 75% straight away. 100% would be sort of hard to justify. We might think at this juncture that you've closed. But we anticipate a majority of the solid candidates are going to show up between that 75 and 50%, which of course will be backed up by the financial information that you submit. We are asking if you did apply for any other programs. The question came up today actually from a state representative if whether or not somebody could apply for Delco Strong 2 if they got PPP. The answer to that is absolutely yes. But understand that both funding sources are federal funds. And so what we have to do is make sure that you are not double dipping. It is ultimately the responsibility of the business owner. But again, we understand you've got a lot on your plate and you've got a lot going on and a lot of concern and worry. So if we see the PPP, we may have a discussion with you or ask you to sit down with, for instance, a mentor to be able to make sure that you're not overlapping payments. So if PPP is covering your 2 employees for the months of June and July, you can't use Delco Strong 2 money to be able to cover those 2 employees for June and July. But you could use Delco Strong 2 monies in order to cover your rent, to cover your inventory, your supplies, or anything else. And it's just, we know that the additional expenditure is there. It's just making sure that you're aware that you need to document as well exactly how those monies were spent for Delco 2. We're not going to dictate how your monies are spent, but we're going to make sure that you're aware that you can't pay those 2 employees for June and July with both PPP and Delco Strong 2. Some acknowledgements: these initial blocks are absolutes. You have to fill them out. They will be required questions, and of course, the full signature panel. So it is the application questionnaire. It is the tax return. If your tax return is 2018, you're going to need the P&L for 2019 and your 2020 P&L. And that is all that I think is needed. And we tried to make it as simple as possible. I hope that this is simple enough that that everybody who needs it can get it out and get that. But I will wait around. I see there's some questions in there, but I'm going to hand it over to Frances at this point for any questions so that she can review the nonprofit program for us as well.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you, Trish and Jacqueline, for pulling us all together. I'm going to start by sharing my screen, which I cannot do if I don't share screen. Okay, let me pull this up. Okay, can people see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we actually have 3 grant programs open right now. I wanted to make it really easy for people to see. I'm pretty sure that the county website drives you to that right-hand one, Delco Strong 2 nonprofits. We still have our response fund open, which is going to be a little less restrictive than this one. The census grants are open until July 15th, and that's where we're going to deploy the balance of our the Delco County Census Action Fund. So if you're planning on doing any census outreach between now and the end of October, please do apply. If you click on the Delco Strong 2 link, it walks you through all the requirements and all the restrictions and all the eligibility for the program. There's also a PDF that you can download right here that you can share obviously with other folks and have in front of you. So I'll walk you through the actual portal, which many of you were on the call who have come to us with proposals before. You already have a profile in our system. It's the same system asking you for a variety of different questions to get at whether or not you're going to be a strong candidate for this program. The portal will be open from 9 o'clock on Tuesday, July 7th, until 5 o'clock on July 21st. And our goal is to try and move money out the door by the end of August. It's $4 million, as Laura said, and the grants are going to be made available depending on the size of your organization or the amount of your revenues in any given year. And in your most recent year. We also will be asking you for your most recent 990, whether it's 2019 or 2018. That's where we'll be able to see what your revenue is. But we're going to ask you for financial documents, but we're also going to ask you to pull out key numbers that you'll put into the actual blocks in the application. And that's so that we can quickly pull that information out into our algorithm. Depending on the size of your organization, you're eligible for a grant up to either $25,000 if your revenues are up to $1 million, $35,000 if it's between $1 million and $2.5, $40,000 for 2.5 up to 5, and $5 million to 9. Your maximum grant would be $50,000. So that means if your revenue in your most recent year is over $9 million, you are not eligible for the program. You are also not eligible for the program if you do not have a Delaware County headquarters. And that means that on, I think it's line C of your box C in your IRS 990 on the very first page, if that address is not a Delaware County address, you are not eligible to apply. Even if you provide services in Delaware County, which any eligible applicant would have to do, even if you provide services here, if your headquarters are elsewhere, you are not eligible, and we encourage you to go back to the municipality in which you're headquartered and get them to include nonprofits in their CARES funding in the same way that Delaware County is doing. The application is entirely online. I'm sorry, we're not taking any paper applications. We are asking for, you have to be operational prior to December 30th of 2019. So you cannot be a new nonprofit entity in this year. You have to be at least have been operational by this past December. Government entities, government-controlled entities are not eligible to apply, and neither are churches or religious organizations with respect to their primarily religious activities. If you're a separately incorporated daycare center that operates within a church, that's very different than if you're the actual church that's applying for the funds. The church would not be eligible. Obviously not for-profit entities, and there are several other restrictions similar to what Laura described in her description, but for want of time, I'll point you directly to this place on our website and encourage you to visit there to be clear about what our expectations are. We are asking for, and it depends on the size of your organization, because obviously if you're a small charitable organization, you're not required to have a full audit, but we are asking for a fully completed copy of your most recent IRS 990 filing. We are asking for an accountant or internally prepared audit or financial statements for the most recent year. So if you're large enough, you should be giving us an audit. If you are slightly smaller, and this is all stipulated in the requirements, you should be giving us a review document. If you're much smaller, you should be giving us a full financial statement for your organization. And that means a statement of financial position, otherwise known in the for-profit world as your balance sheet, as well as your, in the business world, it's called your profit and loss, but in the nonprofit world, it's your statement of activities. We are asking you for your mission statement, and we are asking you for a listing of your board of directors, but we are otherwise not asking you for your programs, your case for support of what a wonderful organization you are, how talented your CEO is. This is a mission agnostic proposal. So very different from what you would normally come to us for. It's really almost more an application that your accountant or your bookkeeper would work with your grant writer on than your actual grant writer doing all the legwork. We are also asking you for a monthly budget for your most recent financial statements for the most recent quarter. So April, May, and June, the quarter we just ended. We will accept January through May, but what we're going to be looking for is what was the difference in your revenue and expenses during the quarter that just ended, which is when the pandemic hit, versus a quarter of what your revenue or expenses were in the most recently ended full fiscal year. We want to see what the difference is, what has been the financial hit that you've experienced. We are also looking for your budget through the end of December. We want to see what you're projecting. What do you think your financial health is going to look like by the end of December? You may have had a big hit in this most recent quarter, but you may have gotten a PPP loan. You may have found that your donors are continuing to be very generous, and so your financial hit may not be as extensive. But we're also looking for, so even if your financial hit has not been as extensive as another nonprofit, we are looking for what are the costs that you have incurred due to the pandemic. So did you have to buy a certain kind of equipment, like ventilator equipment if you operate a gym or a daycare center? Did you have to invest in technology because you all went virtual? Oh, Laura might think of some other things that are not jumping into my head right away, but did you have to ramp up some activity due to COVID that has resulted in some additional expenses? And if so, we'd like you to give us a budgeted document. You can include invoices for equipment. You can include a bid for the cost of a piece of equipment, as long as the cost is incurred between March 10th and December 31st. You don't have to go out and get competitive bids. We're really looking for what is it costing you to adapt to this new environment between when the pandemic hit and the end of this calendar year. The CARES funds have to be spent by the end of December, so you have to commit to taking on that expense before then. The only other thing I would reiterate that Laura mentioned that I think is really important is we're really looking for real financial statements. We are looking for a real budget. We are really looking for what your last quarter looked like, what your previous year looked like. Please do not give us your checkbook register. Please do not give us your bank statement. You are eligible for a not insignificant grant. It's worth investing a little bit of money to make sure you're giving us the financial documentation that we really need. This is a federally funded program. It may be audited down the road. We want to make sure that we really do this right, because this county council has really gone out on a limb with Laura and Pat Killian from the Commerce Department to invest in our nonprofit community. We really want to do this right. And so please help us do so. Laura, do you think that I missed anything there? You're on mute right now. Okay.
Nope, I think that did it. We had a couple of questions. I get a couple of them about, do you have to have a storefront? My business is in my home. The answer to that is home-based businesses are eligible. We probably, if rent probably will not be applicable in that situation to pay for a private mortgage, private home residential mortgage. However, the rest of the operating costs would be eligible. And I think somebody else asked about, they didn't get a full grant award for Delco Strong 1. Are they eligible for Delco Strong 2? No, because the likelihood is that your operating costs do not exceed what you were reimbursed for and what you will be reimbursed for with Delco Boost with the additional $2,500. And then I have one from Justin that says, my business is myself, the owner, and one employee. I work part-time, employee is full-time. Do I put myself in as a part-time employee? Absolutely. If you're drawing a salary from the business, then yes, you should put yourself in as a part-time employee. But again, the employment counts will not be a determining factor in this round. And then somebody said, do you want to see all 35 pages of my tax return? I presume that that is the federal tax return and that there's probably an additional 20 for your state Pennsylvania tax return. And yes, we want all 55 pages in that instance. Did I get all of them, Trish?
You did, Laura, you were good. And so before we close this afternoon, I'll remind anybody, and I think they've probably caught on, that if you have any questions, please let us know. We'd love to answer them now, because if you have a question or you're thinking of something that you need answered, chances are somebody else does as well, and those people might not have had the time to jump on this webinar this afternoon and might be viewing this on YouTube. So if you have a question, we'll give you another minute or so to answer it, just because we want to make sure this process is as seamless as possible for folks. And, as Francis and Laura have mentioned, County Council has really gone out of their way to make sure that the businesses here in Delaware County are getting the resources that they need to continue to be a relevant business here. The last thing we want to see are businesses closed because of COVID-19 through no fault of their own. So, and
Trish, I'll just say on that front, I just have to interject. I don't think it's widely known. We sort of, there's a lot of these programs going around, and to date, I believe Delaware County Council has actually put more CARES monies into businesses and nonprofits than any other county in the state of Pennsylvania. So that really is wonderful to have that kind of leadership right now, especially in this situation. Sorry.
No, I'm very grateful that you have, we've covered all of this. And again, if you have any questions, if they're not related to the grants and you're just concerned about how things are happening in your business, if you have any questions about wearing masks and things like that, please reach out to us. We will be able to help you, and we will guide you to the right resources. And as I'm talking, which is what I wanted to kind of stall a little bit, we are receiving a couple more questions.
Yeah.
So Laura, are you seeing them? Okay.
I do. On July 7th, will there be a link available on our site to click on to send the info online? Yes, Bill, there will be a link on that exact page for the for-profits. So when you click on delcostrong.delcopa.org, you go to the for-profit section, and then it'll take you to that application. Similarly, as Francis discussed, you can click on through to the nonprofits now to be able to, I think you have to register now, right, Francis?
You don't have to. You can register on the 7th when you, anytime between the 7th and the 21st, you can register. I mean, we encourage you to go online now, make yourself familiar with the RFP, set up your account. There's a little video that shows you how our system works. It's not complicated. And then on the 7th is when we'll actually have the form open, and you can go in and you can fill out whatever you're ready to fill out, save it, go back out, wait a couple of days until you pull more material together. You have to keep it in draft form, and just make sure that you do submit by 5 o'clock on the 21st, because after that it locks down and we will not be able to entertain any proposal. Even if you're 90% done, we will not entertain your proposal if it's not submitted by 5 o'clock on the 21st.
And Bill, we actually added, we're having tech support. There's a tech support at delcopa.org, which is listed on our website should you have any problems with the technical submission for for-profit. And John, if I am relocating my business to create more room for social distancing within Delaware County, are those costs eligible? I'm presuming you're talking about holding one commercial space and then going to a different commercial space. The ruling factor would be, is your existing business is headquartered in Delaware County? And if that's the case, then they're eligible, because we are not restricting to just having commercial space in this round. It will also include home-based businesses.
Laura, can you submit a paper application for the for-profit? I know for the nonprofit, Francis said we are not, but for the for-profit, you can, correct?
Yeah, we have a drop-off location at our offices in media. We'll accept them from 8:30 to 4:30 on the 7th, 8th, and 9th during normal business hours for us.
Okay. All right. So seeing no more questions, I think we've answered them all. I want to thank Laura and Francis again for joining us this afternoon to try to make this just a little bit easier for businesses to take advantage of the resources that are here in Delaware County. If you have any questions, please reach out, let us know, and we can, oh, Laura, your phone number, 610-565-2225?
566.
566-2225.
Or you can email help@delcopa.org, sorry.
No, that's good. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time this afternoon. We hope everyone has a great 4th of July, and we will, socially distance, say hello, but hopefully we'll be in person soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you, Trish.